Well, welcome Peter Shelley to Global Travel Media. Now, you're Managing Director of the Australian Tourism Export Council, which for those in our audience that may not understand what that means, can you explain what the Tourism Export Council does? Are you exporting wine or, bananas? No?
No, we're exporting quality experiences, John. That's what we do. We're Australian Tourism Export Council, been around for a long time, almost 50 years, in fact. Born way back at the start of inbound for Australia, and I think about 2000 we used to be called the Inbound Tour Operators Association of Australia.
Yes.
And then we wanted to get more traction in government discussions, and the word export was the secret recipe there, and so we moved to change our name, rebrand to Tourism Export Council. It's been really successful. So export is a word that governments certainly understand, sometimes a bit confusing for consumers, but we have a lot of interface with the government, and that's a good thing.
No, I think you're absolutely right, because at the end of the day, inbound tourism in monetary terms and for the government is actually an export. So, it's very critical. Well, look, your members depend on international inbound tourism for business, okay? So an international travel ban must have caused you and your members some considerable angst. So have your members, domestic tourism is reportedly strong. I'm not so sure it's as strong as people make out. But have your members, I'm up here on the Sunshine Coast, and a lot of the operators in Noosa will be dependent on international tourism. So have they been able to make up that lost international business with domestic business?
Yeah, good question. And it's fluctuated over the journey, I guess, in many ways. Our membership, to put it in perspective, has an 80-20 split. 80% are what we call the suppliers of the industry, so that's hotels, tours, attractions, etc. And then 20% are the buyers of the industry, or the distributors, inbound tour operators, online travel agents, wholesalers. And so we've got a real mix. What works with our sector is that buyers and sellers work together to do commercial deals. That's always good in good times, but in these times it's more difficult. And so having that understanding, the supplier side of the industry certainly has, in many cases, in regional areas, let's qualify all of this, when we don't have state border shutdowns and travel can get a bit of a steam up, have been able to do okay. Very generally, I'd say okay. There's certainly many regions that haven't done okay, and there's a long way to go. And let's hope that those borders stay open and domestic travel can move around the country unfettered, and airlines can travel around, and we can actually really disperse our consumers domestically to actually allow all of these people to actually generate some revenue. So that's that side. It's nowhere near as what we'd like it to be, but it's possibly starting to build enough to keep some of these businesses surviving until international returns. Then you've got the buyer or the distributor side, and of course they're they are 100% dependent on the international borders being open. They deal primarily between supplier here and wholesaler internationally. The trade channel in particular is under the pump. So a couple of, in fact, quite a few of those have tried to pivot, as they say, into some domestic opportunities. Been really hard, very crowded market, lots of good expertise already in that marketplace. Hard to find a niche. A couple have found a niche, but of the percentage of our buyer members have really haven't really had much success in that area at all. So overall, the amount of domestic revenue that's replaced international revenue for that buyer sector is minuscule, to be honest. It is better in the supplier side of our membership, but still a long way short of what international would have been providing in the same way.
So it's very fitting that you've got Uluru there behind you, which is the iconic sort of image of Australia. And for, say, a tour operator based in Germany or the USA or wherever, that's one of the most iconic things he uses to sell Australia. So they're really hurting at this point in time. And I would imagine that the operators, for example, that take people around outback Australia, and it was predominantly international, are also hurting at this time as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. Those, it's there's certain regions in Australia that have over many years built up a very good dependency on international travel, inbound travel, through mainly the distributors, inbound tour operators, feeding these wonderful programs, delivering great experiences in amazing places of Australia. So you only find out through this trade network to a degree, and they facilitate that. Now, of course, that's just non-existent. And so, yeah, look, we're really hoping that, Uluru and places like that, just quality tourism assets, magnificent Australian experiences, they'll survive the distance. I'm sure they will, but it'll be a tough road back. There's no doubt of it.
Yeah. Now, a lot of those operators, okay, they've got staff, some are casuals, some are full-time. They've built up expertise with guides and specialist people to drive people around and so on, and coach drivers, you name it, all sorts of people, multilingual people as well, because that's really important with the Chinese business in the past and so on, with Mandarin and so on. So these guys operating in Australia have been able to access JobKeeper till now, okay, or until shortly. So I know that you're very strong at the moment in terms of saying that these businesses have hung on, because it is a bit of a hang on, really. It's basically saying, what's the overdraft like at the moment? What's the loan with the bank going? Can I keep these people going? Thank God I've got a bit of JobKeeper. What happens if JobKeeper stops for the tourism industry?
Well, yeah, it's a niche question for us all at the moment, John. And some would say that in some areas with some businesses, so like I probably should paint the story of most businesses in a supplier context were hit very hard. And as I mentioned there before, some of them are recovering, but others are really desperate. And then you've got the buyer side, the distributor side. They're really, really in trouble, hanging on in many cases. Right, a long way back, there's some very good management decisions took place, and sadly released a number of staff. But tried to hold on to those really key expert staff that you need to rebuild the business. And of course, this time last year when it was all happening, we thought, oh, maybe by the end of the year we'll be back in the game. And of course, we're still possibly another 12 months out of the game. So some really hard decisions for government and for industry, depending what the government does. We are pitching very strongly for some support for the continuation of wage subsidy for industry, especially industry that have been hard hit. And we're now waiting on the government's decision to see where that goes. If it doesn't, the cards don't fall our way, I think we'll see another raft. We'll see another raft of job losses. They've got no choice. They have to release their staff, and the distributors who we know will perform a very critical and fundamental role in the recovery of Australian tourism, because we think, well, many commentators are saying that people will travel, but probably through a retail network initially, because they do want their deposits back. They do want security of travel. They want to understand the expertise that people will provide. So it'll be a bit different for a while. And so these distributors, this distribution channel, these people we talk about that we need to try and keep alive, if you like, commercially, quite critical. So that's the message we're pounding with government. Let's see how it goes.
I mean, when you're meeting with governments, which as an organisation I know you do, are you getting, is it a bit like going to a meeting where you're trying to sell something and you know that the other party doesn't want to buy it? So, okay, and there's blank expressions and they're looking at their computer. Or is there an understanding for what you're saying? Because there's always been this feeling that the government doesn't quite understand travel and tourism, So what sort of reception are you getting, and what sort of numbers are impressing them to say, oh my goodness, we've got a disaster waiting to happen here?
Yeah, look, that's a good question, because tourism is, well, it's very simple on the surface. We have a lot of fun and we drink pina coladas by the pool, don't we? So, that's that perception, but we all know that it's enormously complex sitting in underneath, and how all the commercial relationships work, and, the flows of money and all that sort of thing. And it's a really hard working industry. We know that. And I think one of the challenges we have as an industry is, if you use the word tourism, there's so many components of it. There's so many sectors of it. And whoever the listener is, they might think of a certain sector, but you're talking about a different part of it. And trying to explain how how buying and selling and international trade channels work, that's a bit more of a challenge. I think we've had more success in that in recent years than ever before.
Yeah,
So,
sure.
one of the reasons we moved from inbound to export, it's an export process, an export exchange that takes place. So, look, I think in the government's view, they are trying to understand which parts of the industry are most desperate. I think that's probably where their head is at the moment. We're trying to shepherd them through with knowledge and statistics and data to try and shed light on those areas.
Mm. No, I think you're right. And I think that, from your perspective with inbound tourism, there is a bit more of understanding. I know that the guys at AFTA have been pushing very hard for support for travel agents. And I really don't think that the government understood that actually travel agents being successful and sending people overseas is actually beneficial to Australia because it creates income and employment. So it's a tough world out there. So what's your view currently? JobKeeper, what would you put on it surviving? And will it survive for the travel and tourism industry? We'll put them together for now. But the other question is, why should the government fund tourism and travel? Why shouldn't it fund 30 other industries? I suppose that's their argument. I mean, how strong is the case?
Yeah, look, I think it's good, and I'm sure that's a part of the argument that's being put up on the whiteboard, to be honest, as well. Like, why? What's at risk? I think that's what we talk about. If we do not do something, what's at risk? And so our pitch, especially around the distributors, certainly we want support for everybody who's badly damaged and still suffering. And some of our regional suppliers I worry about a lot, and they're really quality strategic assets for our destination strength, and that's really important to us. So we're pitching on behalf of all suppliers, and especially those that are most damaged. And if they're in a revenue context more damaged, and they go through the how you present your revenue here in Australia with a BAS, it's fairly definable where your revenues are. So I think the tools of assessment as to how difficult people are, what suffering they're undertaking, are fairly defined, or easily defined. So that bit I think is quite good. And then which sectors are the ones that are going to really drive us back? And so, to a comment I made earlier on, we feel that distribution will be important, that inbound tour operators that I talk about, who have amazing expertise and all these relationships with wholesalers, and the pipelines that are still in play because they've kept sort of forwarding the bookings and trying to roll them over and keep them alive, are going to be very valuable. We've got probably, I don't know, in that sector, maybe 200 inbound tour operators, and each of them will generate millions and millions and millions of dollars of revenue for this destination as that pipeline opens again. So the investment in a few, I think, will return tenfold over time. Is a bit the pitch we're talking about. Distribution, always important.
I mean, I would have thought this figure would blow the socks off most people in government, given the success of our export tourism industry over the past decade, which saw international visitors contribute more than 350 billion to the Australian economy. And then others, 55% of tourism businesses will not survive till September without government support. 95% of inbound tour operators have revenue of less than 10% compared to 2019. 50% of ITOs are unable to attract domestic business. It's just not what they do, and they don't have the right product. And for those that do, it represents less than 10% of their international market. 80% of inbound tour operators will be gone by September without some kind of government support, making it much harder for the inbound tourism industry to restart. All that knowledge, all that corporate knowledge, all the skills and expertise will be gone. So therefore, it suggests to us, and I'm sure it suggests to you much more than it does to me, that there has to be some sort of government support for the industry going forward if we're to retain that industry and those skills and expertise and our global market position.
Let's hope so, John. I think that's a great summary of the situation we are in. It's a magnificent industry. It will live to fight another day. It will produce amazing returns for the Australian government and the Australian community over time. So let's hope. We're hoping for a good outcome from the government in the short term.
Well, Peter Shelley, in these difficult times, but with light at the end of the tunnel, with vaccinations and all sorts of things and COVID numbers going down globally, as Managing Director of the Australian Tourism Export Council, you're doing a wonderful job telling government really that the industry does need help. So thank you for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, John. All the best. Good luck to you. Bye for now.
Thank you.